The notion of light tanks emerged during the First World War as a cost-effective alternative to their larger, heavier counterparts. Initially designed to offer a lighter, more economical option for the front, their reign was short-lived. Technological progress and the emergence of the improved heavier tank models swiftly rendered light tanks obsolete in primary combat roles. As they were mothballed or relegated to secondary duties, new avenues for their utilization were explored. One such light tank adapted for a niche task was the British Light Tank Mk.VII, commonly known as the Tetrarch. Despite being declared obsolete and recalled from the front in 1941, 3 years later it began to be employed once again in airborne assaults. Following the conclusion of the Great War, armies around the world reflected on the technological innovations and harsh lessons learned from the conflict. The interwar period thus emerged as a time of rapid progress, extensive testing, and theoretical exploration with armored vehicles. Following these developments, the British Army recognized the need to restructure their forces. Consequently, they categorized tank designs into three distinct groups: infantry tanks, cruiser tanks, and light tanks. Infantry tanks were specifically engineered to offer armored support to infantry units, prioritizing protection over speed. However, both the Royal Tank Corps and the Cavalry Corps sought faster armored vehicles for rapid maneuvers, screening, breakthrough exploitation, and reconnaissance missions. These vehicles, known as cruiser tanks, served as mechanized cavalry, boasting better mobility but lighter armament and armor protection compared to infantry tanks. The light tanks were primarily tasked with scouting enemy positions and serving as policing vehicle for occupational forces. Consequently, they featured minimal armor and typically carried only machine guns. In the British Army, most of these tanks were from the Vickers-Armstrong series of light tanks. The British light tank of choice was the Vickers-Armstrong Light Tank Mk.VI, which saw extensive service from the mid to late 1930s. Despite its perceived suitability, by the onset of the Second World War, Vickers chief tank designer Leslie Little had initiated a private project aimed at replacing the Mk.VI. This would lead to the development of the light tank Mk.VII, nicknamed Tetrarch. The term Tetrarch originated from Roman nomenclature, denoting the governor of one of 4 provinces of territory, or from the Greek word for ruler. This particular nickname started being officially used after September 1941. The responsibility for developing this new tank fell upon the Vickers-Armstrong Company. Commencing its design in 1937, they had a proposal ready for presentation to the War Office by 1938. Initially, this vehicle was categorized as a light cruiser. The British Army was content with the Mk.VI light tank at the time and deemed its replacement a low priority. So another potential role had to be found for the Mk.VII. While it was tested as a light cruiser, eventually it was rejected in favor of the cruiser tank Mk.I. Nevertheless, the Mk.VII endured further trials from May to June 1938. Upon their conclusion, the War Office added the new A.17 designation, reclassified as a light tank once more. A small production order of 70 vehicles was subsequently issued, with production slated to commence in July 1938. However, by November, this number was increased to 120, with 2 necessary design modifications. Firstly, the armament was to be replaced from a 15mm Besa main gun and a 7.92 Besa machine gun to an ordnance quick-firing 2-pounder gun with a coaxial 7.92mm Besa. Secondly, an external fuel tank was to be mounted on the rear of the vehicle to enhance operational range. Production of this vehicle began in July 1940, although the War Office subsequently altered the requested quantity several times, initially reducing it to 70, then increasing it to 100, and ultimately to 220. Tetrarch production suffered throughout its entire run. In 1940, amidst the ongoing German invasion of France, the Vickers Mk.VI proved completely ineffective against German armor. Consequently, the production of light tanks began to be gradually phased out in favor of infantry and cruiser tanks. The relocation of Tetrarch production from the Elswick plant in Newcastle upon Tyne to the Metro Camel factory in Birmingham in mid-1940 slowed Vickers' output further. Production issues were further exacerbated by inherent design flaws, notably a faulty cooling system, and by the German air raids damaging supply lines. These factors collectively delayed the commencement of production until November 1940, when the first vehicle was completed. By 1942, only 100 tanks of this type would be ever built. The Tetrarch was initially designed as a replacement for the existing Vickers Mark VI light tank, weighing 7.6 tons. It had riveted armor with a maximum thickness of 16 mm. Thanks to its Henry Meadows Limited Type 30 12-cylinder engine, which churned out up to 165 horsepower, it could achieve speeds of up to 64 km per hour. Embracing a system akin to the Christie suspension, the Tetrarch employed long coil springs for a smooth ride. Its tracks were supported by 4 road wheels, doubling as supports for the track return due to their size. Additionally, the Tetrarch adopted the steering mechanism from the Universal Carrier. Turning the tank involved warping or bending the tracks from side to side, enabling a turning radius of around 27.4 meters. For tighter turns, the driver could employ track braking. The crew comprised 3 members, with the commander and the gunner stationed in the turret while the driver occupied the hull. Due to the limited crew size, the commander also took on the role of loader. By 1944, certain tanks were equipped with the Little John adapters, enhancing the capabilities of the 2-pounder cannon with which the tank was armed and allowing it to utilize armor-piercing composite non-rigid rounds. This ammunition featured a softer outer metal, allowing the slightly smaller Little John adapter to compress the round and elevate the pressure behind the shot. Consequently, the velocity surged from 853 meters per second to 1,143 meters per second, granting the main gun the capability to penetrate approximately 80 mm of armor from a distance of around 150 meters. Despite a limited production run, the Tetrarch underwent testing in 2 distinct variants. The initial model, known as the Tetrarch 1CS, was designed as a mobile support platform equipped with a 7.62 cm howitzer. The second variant, the Tetrarch DD, featured a duplex drive system and canvas screens to facilitate flotation and water crossings. Trials took place in June of 1941 at the Brent Reservoir. Its success led to modification of the duplex drive for use on Valentine tanks and eventually on M4 medium tanks deployed during the Normandy campaign. The first units to receive Tetrarchs were the 1st Armored Division and the 6th Armored Division. However, when these units were deployed to the North African theater, the Tetrarchs were found unsuitable for service due to faulty cooling system. Because of this, they had to be redeployed. 12 Tetrarchs withdrawn from the 1st Armored Division were reassigned to C Squadron of the Special Service Squadron. Of these, 6 vehicles were deployed to Freetown, West Africa. On May 5, 1942, as Operation Ironclad commenced in Madagascar, 6 B Squadron Valentine tanks and 6 C Squadron Tetrarchs took part in the amphibious assault of the port of Antsirabe, facing 75mm artillery emplacements and entrenched Vichy forces. The attacking British units suffered the loss of 4 Valentines and 3 Tetrarchs. Nonetheless, they managed to achieve their objective. By the end of the operation, only 3 out of the 12 Tetrarchs remained operational. These remained in Madagascar until 1943. In 1940, the War Office and the British Army articulated a need for airborne units to be equipped with heavier weaponry, prompting the study of utilizing gliders. Testing commenced in January 1941 to ascertain whether light tanks could be effectively transported using the General Aircraft Hamilcar glider. As the visibility of the project became apparent, the Tetrarch tank was redesignated as an airborne tank. For the planned Allied invasion of occupied France in June 1944, around 20 tanks were allocated to the 6th Airborne Armored Reconnaissance Regiment AARR. On the 5th of June, advanced elements of the 5th Parachute Brigade landed and cleared the landing zone of anti-glider obstacles, allowing the squadrons of the AARR to land on D-Day. However, out of the 20 tanks that took off for Normandy, one broke free from its restraints mid-flight, causing the glider to crash. Additionally, 2 gliders collided upon landing, destroying their tank cargo, and 1 tank was struck by a landing Hamilcar glider, flipping it upside down and rendering it unusable. Furthermore, 11 of the Tetrarchs became entangled in discarded parachutes, requiring considerable time to free them. Delays in preparing the landed Tetrarchs for combat spared them from engaging the counter-attacking German armored forces, which included Panzer IVs. Once they were made combat ready, The Tetrarch proceeded to Bois-de-Bœuf the next day and conducted reconnaissance of Tron-Can. Upon rendezvousing with the 8th Parachute Battalion in Bois-de-Bœuf, they actively supported the British advance in Normandy by providing crucial reconnaissance for the airborne troops. On 31st of July, these tanks were placed under the command of the 5th Parachute Brigade and tasked with serving as rapid reaction force, aiding in minor advances leading up to the breakout in August. However, as the campaign progressed, the Tetrarchs found themselves transitioning to headquarters defense, being replaced by the Cromwells in all other roles. Ultimately, the Tetrarchs were withdrawn from mainland Europe in early September, never to be deployed in combat again by the Allies. In January 1946, the Tetrarch tanks were officially declared obsolete. Their function as airborne tanks was gradually supplanted by the M22 Locust, which the British Armed Forces adopted in 1943. Consequently, the Tetrarch tanks were reassigned to training duties until their eventual phase-out from service in 1950. In June 1941, with the onset of Operation Barbarossa, the Soviet Union was included in the Lend-Lease program. Around 20 Tetrarchs were dispatched to the Soviet Union, traveling through Iran and arriving by the end of 1941. After crews underwent training, these tanks were allocated to the 151st Tank Brigade, where they operated alongside the Soviet T-26 tanks. During the conflict near the Abin River on 27th of January 1943, the 151st encountered a setback when 15 Tetrarchs were abandoned by their crews after sustaining damage or becoming immobilized due to enemy fire. By the end of January, the operational count dwindled to 14, and on the 1st of February, an additional 6 tanks were lost. By May, only 7 operational vehicles remained. The scarcity of spare parts also took a toll on the vehicles, leading to further losses as the surviving tanks were reassigned to the 132nd Tank Regiment and the 5th Guards Tank Brigade. By September, a mere 2 Tetrarchs were still in service, ultimately being retired in the autumn of 1943. This concludes our video on the Tetrarch light tank. What do you think of this British light tank? Were the British right to use a light tank in the support of airborne troops? Was it maybe too lightly armed and protected for this role? Share your opinions in the comment section below. If you have not done so already, we invite you to subscribe to stay updated on future content. If you'd like to contribute further, consider supporting us on Patreon or PayPal. Your contributions help us create more engaging videos. Until next time, stay focused and stay tuned.